Hi, my name's Donna Marian. I own the Creeper Gallery in New Hope, Pennsylvania, and I create art, I sell haunted items, and I see ghosts. The Creeper Gallery opened 10 years ago. I had lost my soul baby, my dog, and I was paralyzed as a human, and I couldn't get out of it. And a friend of mine or an acquaintance of mine, we had lunch in New Hope to try and get out of my funk. And I said, you know, I always wanted to open a shop in New Hope, Pennsylvania. And she said, oh, I did too. And 6 months later, we decided to do it. She's no longer with us. We have a new business partner now, Madam Clara. And we're doing very well since COVID. We didn't think we'd survive that. And we're still here 10 years later. It was a 5-year plan that stretched to 10 years. And I'm not getting any younger. So I could be selling my bones in 5 years. I base my sculptures and art off of life, the way I see it, which is kind of a scary place to be. I watch a lot of news. I listen to news stations as I'm creating. I get a lot of inspiration, unfortunately, from tragedies and things humans do to one another. Death, I'm not afraid of death. Death to me is just another adventure. Our souls go somewhere. You can't explain it. You can't explain it through religion. I'm not fearful of it. I'm more fearful of the way it is. I won't get in a plane. I don't want that to be my last minute of life. But I don't think humanity today faces their death in a good way. Societies in the past have embraced it. They had it all around them, and they weren't as fearful. People today ignore it, and it's coming for all of us. And so you can either embrace it and live your life to the fullest while you have it, because honestly, when you get to my age, which is up there, you only have a few summers left. And if you haven't done what you've wanted to do in life, you become like kind of disabled. You can't physically do what you always wanted to do. So do it when you're young. But when we're young, we have other things to do, like find boyfriends or go to the clubs or whatever. Unfortunately, you know, you get to a certain age and you can't physically do things anymore. So I just try and put death in people's face to make them realize your days are numbered, and if you don't do what you need to do now, you're not going to do it in 10 years. You're not going to do it in 5 years. You may not have 24 hours. None of us know when that's coming for us. And I always tell people, somebody will live on forever as long as there's someone that remembers them or can say their name. Once that person's gone, you've become just another little unknown in history, and nobody will know who you are. Like all the photographs that sit in our basements of families, and we don't know who they are. We don't know what they've done. We don't know what their lives were like. We will be forgotten. None of us want to be forgotten, but we will all be forgotten. The first haunted object I brought to the Creeper Gallery was a piece of wallpaper that had claw marks in it and blood. And it came out of a murder house in Baltimore, Maryland, where I think it was a fortune teller or a psychic convinced a man that he was possessed by demons. And she kept doing this. Well, the man was mentally challenged. He had some challenges, and she kept increasing the amount of money he had to pay to deal with his demons till it got to the point where he couldn't deal with those demons anymore because he couldn't afford to go to her. So he went to her and begged her to get rid of the demons because he couldn't afford, and she wouldn't see him. And so she created this monster, and this monster came back and beheaded her when she answered the door, drug her through the hallway, and killed her. Some man that was doing demolition had the common sense to take some of that wallpaper and sell it. He was selling it on Etsy or eBay. And I bought one. And sure enough, those people were still attached to that piece of wallpaper from the murder house. Now, the murder house is gone. I think they demolished it. But there were numerous paranormal groups that had gone through there before they demolished it and proven that spirits were still there. But usually with terrible tragedies like that, the items hold that spirit. And I believe the spirit of that fortune teller is still attached to that wallpaper. So that was an interesting piece, because that was one of the first ones that I brought for the public to read about, you know, make them aware of it. And then I finally sold it. So I have a cursed box in my red room, which I bought from a man on Etsy. And it was a weird thing because I never go to Etsy for anything, ever. But I had gone in because I was looking for something for a piece of art I was working on. And you know, at the bottom they'll show other things you might like. And they had this box. And it had a cross on top. It was Georgian, that era. And you could see there's wax on it, and you know, I'm like, oh, you know, and the only thing it said in the description was a Dybbuk box, which it was not a Dybbuk box. It was a containment box for spirits, and it had a cross, so a Dybbuk wouldn't have a cross on it. But I had to get it, so it said in the description, and it was expensive. It was a couple $100, and I thought, oh, you know, I'm gonna spend this for a ghost. But I contacted the seller, who was in England, because all he wrote in his description was, don't ask me any questions. So I did, and he just wouldn't give me any answers, and I bought it. It had wax around it, and you know, which was not as old, the wax, as I would have thought. And it's burnt in one corner. Somebody tried to burn it. It had 40 or 50 square head nails, the old nails. And you know, the age was certainly there. And then there was another seal of wax below the newer wax, which was old paraffin wax. And I bought it, and I took it to my vet, who x-rayed it for me so I could see if there was anything in it, because stuff was shaking in there. And I did get all my questions answered from the men in England, and I decided to open it, and it was the worst mistake I ever made. I had a Wiccan elder working on the case with me, paranormal investigators working on the case, 2 mediums working on the case, and myself. And I want to tell you, I did open it. What was inside was weird. It was like stuff from the 40s, like I thought it would be Victorian, jewels, diamonds, who knows, you know. We did get a lot of answers when we did our first paranormal investigation. We knew the man that was attached to it was William Allington, but what was inside were 7 or 8 other spirits, which William was warning us not to ever open the box because they were contained within the box. So I think what happened was William married a commoner. She disappeared, and when she disappeared, all her things were put in this box and sealed shut, because I guess they didn't want her to haunt the family. And William didn't ever know what happened. And when William finally died, that somebody opened the box. The last descendant opened the box and took all the contents out. I guess there were valuables in there. And over time, like over 20 years, somebody got the box and put other things in it and resealed it up in the 20th century. So the stuff that was in there dated. There were coins, there was a little piece of hippie jewelry, there was a horsehair brush for like your clothing, just odd disjointed things. And the only way I could open the box was to use a Sawzall and actually cut the bottom out because of all the nails, which I ultimately sealed back up with all the contents. That box, I believe, killed my dog. It made the Wiccan elder very ill, and she ultimately died. And several of the people involved had deaths in their families surrounding that period. And actually, after my dog came down with like a fatal illness, a immune illness. He was 5 years old. He was healthy, but he was under me when I opened the box. And the next day he collapsed, had 0 platelets. It was like anemia, and we almost lost him. It's getting me sad, because I did this. But $40,000 later, he survived for 2 years. But every time somebody will come in, the paranormal groups will come in, or a medium will come in and handle the box, my dog would start having seizures. And then the minute they would put the box down, the seizures would stop. And they finally, after 2 years, gave me a clean bill of health, said they thought he beat it. He was in remission for 2 years. And 2 years to the day that we opened that box, he died. And leading up to that, my original business partner, the day that we opened it, her mother and her dog died 5 minutes apart. And the Wiccan elder died. A lot of people associated with that box have died. So we figure it's now locked in a case where the only one that can handle it is me. And I will eventually burn it. Right now I like to torture him and yell at him and stuff like that. So.
Do you have any last thoughts on death itself?
It's just that we don't get over it. We think we do, but we live with that grief for the rest of our days, for sure. I don't think it ever leaves. I think if you've lost somebody and you're tortured by it, you can shove it down in your psyche and not think about it. But believe me, every time there's something that reminds you of that person or creature, or something that reminds you of your grief, you're right back there. You're just one step away from being right where you were. And it's because we've not exposed ourselves. We weren't told at a young age that we're going to die. We're the only creature on earth that knows we're going to die. And if you break it down into summers, how many summers do you have, really, if you think about it? Not a lot. So we would be in grief 24/7, if we thought about death all the time. I bring death into the light, I hope, just so I remind people their days are numbered and live your life, basically. And that's what the Victorians did. Grief, it's always going to be there. Grief will always be there. You can't get away from it.